Hey, I'm Jane. I'm your host. I'm going to say something that might land a little bit differently than what you're potentially hearing everywhere right now, given it's the beginning of 2026. And I invite you to sit with it for just a second. There's a lot of talk that I'm seeing about getting back to basics. More time in nature, present moments with family, simpler routines, less screen time, slower mornings. And honestly, I love all of that. There's a place for all of that. But here's what I've noticed nobody's actually saying out loud. And I think it's the most important part personally. When people say, I want to get back to basics, what they're actually saying, in my experience, is, I want to get back to basics so that I can start living again. And that's the real thing. That's what's underneath. And that changes everything about how we approach the next few months. Even if you're not listening to this in January but feel called to get back to those basics, same applies. Because most of what you're going to be hearing about New Year resolutions, new year, new me, fresh start, it's built on this really old model that says, let's bang into life in January, winter, like it's the middle of summer, and let's start pulling apart all of the things that we need to fix in inverted commas about ourselves, our lives, our Reiki practice, our work as a practitioner. So obviously we've got to burn that down. We start on Monday, we start afresh, whole new you. That's not what we're doing here today. Whether applying this in the context of Reiki practice or life, it's all the same thing. Given Reiki flows from the unique truth of who we are individually. Basics do not feel basic because often we're unlearning and relearning how to actually live. Think about that for just a moment. We were never really taught to live in the expansiveness and in the evolution that I believe, if you're here with me right now, that we all crave. We were taught to perform, to achieve, to optimize, to fit into systems that were most often never designed for actual aliveness. Whether with Reiki, with follow the hand positions, use the symbols, just accept that gatekeeping is normal in inverted commas, or bow to the master, adhere to the lineage hierarchy, outsource your power and accept that as normal as well, or in life, which generally, in my experience, all comes back to the way things should look. Your home, your job, your bank balance, your holidays, as opposed to how it feels. So when you try to get back to basics, back to presence, back to your body, back to what matters, it doesn't feel like returning to something that we already know. It can feel like learning for the first time. And that's why it can feel challenging. That's why it requires a level of commitment, and not that harsh, grinding type of commitment that just commit to something. We should all be committing to something and sticking to it as we grow up, right? That's the old way. That's the way that we all know hasn't worked for us thus far in life. And that's often why it feels revolutionary and can appear as being quite uncomfortable when we try and get back to these basics. So typically what I've found is we dive out of the type of back to basics that actually support us. One, because it can feel too uncomfy, and two, because often we simply don't actually have the skills to be able to support ourselves, because we're not going back to basics as we've once known it. It's almost like unfamiliar land and territory, right? You're learning, you're unlearning, sorry, the systems that taught you to abandon yourself. And then you're relearning how to trust yourself, listen to yourself, honor yourself. And that's not basic, it's profound work. And it's likely going to feel a bit challenging, a bit strange, sometimes uncomfortable, because you're literally rewiring how you relate to yourself, your own life. But here's the thing, on the other side of that unlearning and relearning, it's where we actually start living, start thriving again. Let me share with you what I'm actually seeing, because I work with many people, practitioners mostly, some not practitioners, who are in that space right now. So the Reiki practitioners, the healers, the coaches, people in business who are also deeply spiritual, and what they're all saying underneath it, I want to go back to basics, is that somewhere in there, they're tired, they're exhausted, they're depleted. And the exhaustion isn't actually about doing too much, it's about doing too much of the wrong things, in my experience. Now, let me explain that, right? As someone who frequently talks about there not being a right or wrong way to do things. We live in systems that are built to keep us separated from what actually matters, from our intuition, from spiritual wisdom, from our actual priorities in life, from people we love, from our bodies, from our spiritual practice. And then when we do manage to reconnect to that, it can kind of still feel separated, speaking from personal experience. So there you feeling like you have to go somewhere to be spiritual, a class or whatever. Rarely is all of this integrated in your life, because most often, again, we've not got the skills that allow us to be able to integrate, to embody. And so if you're like, well, I used to be there, you'll be trying really hard in a multitude of different ways over the years, working on your growth, maybe courses, classes, whatever ways to help yourself, but something is still not clicking. That's normally the integration and the embodiment piece. And these systems, they are relentless. I mean, you're likely to already know this on some level. If you're a Reiki practitioner, you've probably experienced this. You trained in energy, holding space, to listen, to be present. And then the business side might kick in, and suddenly you're supposed to be a marketer, a salesperson, a content creator, a brand builder. You're following protocols that in Reiki sessions with others, or maybe even in your own self Reiki practice, that doesn't feel like you. You're pricing yourself based on what everybody else is charging. You're isolated because the traditional spiritual world says you maybe shouldn't talk about the business and money elements or visibility or your actual worth. And if you're not a practitioner, but you're here with me, maybe you're in a corporate job or a business or a creative field where the pressure is constant, where productivity means something different every quarter, where your inbox is somebody else's priority list, where you're supposed to be available all the time, optimized all the time, growing all the time. The burnout isn't because I've found we're doing too much of the right things. It's because the systems we're operating within are designed to pull us away from what actually sustains us. And that's why getting back to basics is so magnetic right now. There's been a highlight in this for me in terms of what I see in my world coming into 2026. But getting back to basics has been an ever increasing theme. I would say definitely over the past 2 years, certainly over the past eight, more so and more so, because I believe that people can feel when something's off. They can feel when they're not living, when they're managing, they're coping, and they're just getting through. Here's the themes that I see that we were all kind of taught. If your life's not working, it needs to blow up a wee bit. Start over on the Monday, new year, new you, new job, new city, new relationship, whole new system, completely different approach. And sometimes that's necessary. I'm not going to say that it's not, I'm not saying that that's never the answer. But what I am saying is it's not the only answer. And it's probably not the answer that the majority of you, I sense, might be looking for right now. The blow it all up and start a fresh model comes from that scarcity mindset. It comes from the belief that your current life is so fundamentally broken that there's no fixing it. You've got to demolish and rebuild, which is what we're fed a lot of the time, isn't it? Because it sells, the new anti-aging cream. Or my socials feed right now is all about these gym type wobble machines, where apparently all I need to do is drop 3 dress sizes by standing on one to let it do its work. Like, wow, Clearly that's come up for me. My phone's always listed in, right? Clearly that's come up for me, and I've temporarily thought, oh, what's that? And just held on to it a little bit too long on my screen to investigate. And now, of course, I'm inundated with advert after advert on social platforms for one of these things. The same with Change Your Life in 7 days challenges, learn Reiki in a 2-day course for £99 offers. Again, wow, you know? So that's not how growth actually works. In a sense, you already know that. And it's certainly not how transformation actually works. And it's definitely not how, in my experience, you can reclaim and evolve in your life and start living again. What I believe we actually need is something different. Pruning, not demolishing. Now, there might be some more strict pruning, or indeed some demolishing born from the initial pruning. That's another matter. That's a tomorrow job. That's an aligned evolution of a starting point. We just need to start that realignment. We need to listen to what's actually trying to emerge rather than forcing a predetermined plan. So let me share with you 5 really strong ways to actually get back to basics. And I mean actually, in a way that works, whether you're a Reiki practitioner or a parent or an entrepreneur, or you've got a 9 to 5, or you might have a combination of all of the above. These aren't tips, these are foundations. And the reason I'm calling them that is because they apply to your Reiki practice and your life. You might want to consider these 5 areas from the perspective of 1, your Reiki practice, and 2, your wider life. In essence, they are all the same thing. So, foundation 1, get honest about your energy, not your time. Everyone talks about time management, time blocking, time optimization. And I'm going to tell you something that might sound weird. Your time problem isn't a time problem, it's an energy problem. You can have 25 hours in a day and still feel like you're drowning if your energy is going to things that do not matter to you, things that don't align, things that pull you away from your actual purpose. In Reiki, we talk about energy flow. We talk about where your energy is going. We talk about blockages and stagnation and what happens when personal energy gets stuck. Personal energy, of course, originating from your own individual energy system, universal life force energy being Reiki, universal consciousness, different things. Your life works in exactly the same way. So the first foundation is, let's get honest about where our energy is actually going, not where we think it should go, not where we planned it to go, not where it is always gone, but where it's actually going right now. Be honest with that. And here's the thing, you don't need to cut everything. You don't need to quit your job or stop seeing your friends or abandon your projects. Maybe some of that is needed for you right now. Only you'll know. Maybe some of that kicks in later if it's aligned for you. But for now, let's just start at this place. The need to get honest about energy exchange. Are you putting in energy to things that are depleting you? Things that don't align with who you actually are or what you actually value? Things that are pulling you away from living? Because if you are, those are the things to look at first. Not because you're doing too much, but because you're doing too much of the misaligned stuff. For practitioners, this means getting honest about whether you are teaching protocols, if you're a Reiki teacher, because you actually believe in them, or because you were taught that you should, and now you've kind of got in a way with that, and you're like, oh no, this is going to require a little bit of effort to get myself out of this place. Whether you're pricing yourself based on the actual value of the transformation that you know that you offer, or based on what everybody else is doing. Whether you're feeling a bit isolated because that's what feels right for you right now. Periods of isolation, of inward reflection, can be days, weeks, months, even years, and that's all right. Or is it because you've internalized the message that visibility isn't spiritual when it comes to your business, or because you are scared to put yourself back out there into a group as a new version of yourself and find that new community that you're craving? And just generally, this means getting honest about whether you are perhaps in a job that isn't yours anymore. or whether you're living someone else's priority list, whether you're saying yes to things because you actually want to, or because you're afraid of what happens if you say no, whether you're available to the people you love and that's a reciprocal bond, or whether you are depleted showing up. You may have to take a look at why that is and where you're overpouring and overgiving. Or if indeed you feel it's one-sided, you're given, but there's a block somewhere in the receiving, whether that's because it's not reciprocal and it's just not being offered up, or whether receiving something that you find incredibly challenging in comparison to giving. So this energy audit, right, that's going to come first. Everything else kind of builds from there. Now, let me tell you a story. One of my brilliant friends, Leo, once said to me, Jane, write down what you're doing with your energy every 15 minutes for a full day. This was maybe about 4-5 years ago when I did it. And he said, you're going to realise something. And what I realised is that I didn't have a time problem. I had an energy going in the wrong places problem. Foundation 2, distinguish between deviation and derailment. Now, if you are on my mailing list, my weekly emailers, they're normally really in depth and really quite meaty. I spoke about this on Sunday, I think it was. Now, if you're not on there and you want to be on there, I've dropped the link in the podcast notes for you. And this one is perhaps going to challenge something you've probably been your whole life. We grow up with this narrative that says, have a plan, stick to the plan, do not deviate. Deviation's failure, it's weakness. It's you not being disciplined enough or committed enough or enough to stick at it. Now, I personally learned by experience. The running joke in my circle of close friends is, if you want to know how to do something the wrong way, just ask Jane, because I have lived like a million lives. There's a million versions of myself. And you can be absolutely sure that for the first 30 years of that life, I took the scenic route. I ignored the signs and later learned exactly why they were there. Now, anyway, I find from not just my own experience, but having worked with so many beautiful humans, I love human connection. The everyday, what appears to be mundane human connection actually excites me the most, because I learned so much about life via these beautiful mundane connections. Anyway, tangent in. What most of us white knuckle our way through our plans that aren't working anymore, staying in situations that are not aligned, ignoring the nudges, the intuitive hits, the gentle redirects that are spiritual guidance, trying to move us towards something better. And then we wonder why we're tired. Yeah. Here's what I actually believe. Deviation is not a failure. Deviation is information. It's course correcting. It's your spiritual team. Whether you know them or not, they are there. And your inner compass saying, hiya, this isn't working for me anymore. But there's a difference between deviation and derailment. Deviation is when you're moving towards something that's more aligned. It might look different from the original plan. It might surprise you, but it's moving you towards something. Derailment is when you're moving away from everything because you're scared, overwhelmed, or trying to escape. And I've found it's important to listen to deviation while you're building, not after you've already abandoned ship. Now, I'm going to do that one again, right? I'm going to repeat. Listen to deviation while you are building, not after you've already abandoned ship. I personally had to abandon many ships because I didn't listen to deviation when I was building, because the deviation felt uncomfortable, challenging. I just thought I could kind of stick a plaster over it and keep on going in so many respects, from tiny, tiny little everyday things right through to big, massive life decisions and choices. Yeah. Listen to the deviation while you're building. We're always building. Let's there is no final destination point. We are always building. But I honestly, genuinely believe that if we listen whilst we are in the everyday of the building, we will not get to the point where there's a hole. If you read tarot, what we're really talking about here is there are going to be tower moments, right? The tower card, the one that everybody fears. In my experience, tower, death, hanged man, those three come out and folk are like, oh my God. Okay, let's just take a breath on them. The tower card is unavoidable. We're going to have these moments of destruction and rebuilding. However, coming at a rebuilding moment, having listened to the spiritual guidance and your intuition, your internal compass, means that actually we're a wee bit prepared for it. We know it's coming. We know it's going to be challenging. We know what we're going to have to do kinda to get through it. And we know it's good for us. You keep ignoring the intuition. You keep ignoring the spiritual wisdom. The tower card comes and it takes you. It takes you from underneath you. And you look back on it and you think, oh, God, there have been so many signs. There have been so many times where I could have done that. This was telling me to do that, pulling me this way. And instead, here we are with only one option forward, which is to rebuild from the moment that we're in, because we've not listened to the deviation whilst we've been building. This means that you can change your mind about what you want. And just checking my mic there, I thought I'd turned off. And what works for you. You can pivot your business. You can leave the job. You can say no thanks. You can say, I thought this was right for me, but I was wrong. That's not a failure. That's listening. It might not feel uncomfortable. You might not see a logical way through. In fact, in my experience, initially, we never see the logical way through, because initially, when we realise that there's a change or a challenge coming and it's ramping up and it's ramping up, we become more and more dysregulated. So the ability to regulate the nervous system is always really fundamentally important, so that we can listen, so that we don't just bulldoze forward. I'm a Tyrian. I've got a lot of Aries in my chart as well. So I always think of it as me with my horns bulldozing forward. Yeah. That's why your spiritual team and the spirit of Reiki energy are there to help you, to support you. For Reiki practitioners, it means you can deviate from protocol, and inverted commas, if the person in front of you needs something different. You can charge differently to what you were led to believe you should, in inverted commas. You can teach in your own way. You can be visible. You can build community. You can evolve your practice based on what you're learning and what you feel you are pulled to bring out into the world, what the world you sense at this moment can benefit from via your service. And you can fill in the holes and gaps in your training if you need to. That allows you to be able to do all of that. That is why I am here. It's what I do in the world. Whilst I don't buy into this new year, new me, fresh start BS, I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't part of a wider society that places focus on that, particularly at this time of the year. So it prompts me on some level to pause, to consider slowly and gently, as I'm peeking out into this new year, what is deviating in my world right now, and then regroup with myself. So if you're pausing to reflect as the year begins, or indeed taking stock as the year goes on, which I think is a brilliant thing to always do, I found a key thing there to consider is, am I moving towards something that feels more aligned, more true, more me? That's deviation, that's wisdom, that's worth following. It's definitely not a failing. If you are running away because it's overwhelmed, you're overwhelmed, it's feeling chaotic and catastrophic, that can often be derailment. And that's the thing to pause on. Yeah. Foundation 3 is rebuilding your relationship with your body. Now, I'm passionate on this one, and I might be coming at this a wee bit differently to what you'll hear elsewhere, as you might expect. Now, this is the one that changes pretty much everything I've learned. We live in a culture that almost is completely disembodied. We live in our heads, we live in our plans, our productivity metrics, and our email inboxes. And our bodies are just kind of there, yeah, carrying us around, sending signals that often we're too busy to listen to. And then you might wonder why you're burnt out. Your body knows things that your mind doesn't. Your body knows when something's misaligned. Your body knows when you need rest. Your body knows when you're in the wrong situation. Your body knows what actually matters to you. Now, I work with and have great experience of working with people with chronic health conditions. Okay? What I am not saying here is that a health condition or the burnout, whatever it might be experiencing for you, is your fault because you have not listened to your body and ended up in the place that you are. That is damaging. It's also inaccurate. Okay, so I just want to almost caveat that in there. If you're not in your body, if you're not actually inhabiting it, listening to it, trusting it, loving it, if I'm honest, you're going to keep making decisions based on what you think you should do, not what's actually right for you. And that's kind of the angle that I'm coming at on this foundation. So the third foundation is getting back into your body, the body that you inhabit now. Now, how you've got there is, I'm going to say by the by. Obviously, we're always growing, we're always evolving, we're always putting some level of effort into personal healing work. And as we do that, certainly as we do that in the way that I'm dedicated and committed to doing and both offering up this work into the world, we're working on not just a mental body level, but we are working on an emotional body level, spiritual body level, physical level, a somatic level with the work that I do. So getting back into your body isn't, for me, all about going to the gym and getting fit. Okay, now I'm not saying undeniably, okay, having a healthy body, not by the metrics of society, not thinness equals healthy, okay. What I'm saying is having a healthy body is more than just how your body looks. It's more than just the physicality of your body. You're a whole human, interconnected, interwoven being, right? Notice when your body feels like what your body feels like, sorry, when you wake up in the morning. Is it tense? Is it contracted? Is it heavy? Notice when your body feels like notice what your body feels like when you're doing something. Is it open? Is it expansive? Does it relax? Does it come alive? Notice what your body feels like around certain people, certain situations, certain decisions. Your body is constantly giving you information. Work from where you are in terms of where you're at and your relationship with your body right now, on emotional level, spiritual level, mental level, physical level. Whilst you're working on that healing that ties into the relationship that you now have with it. But I always say we have to work on two levels. Here we go. We're gonna go kind of left a minute. I always say there's two levels that we need to work on. Okay, when we're working with our own healing. Now, there is the long-term stuff that we're working on, you know. And it's not always about digging up the trauma and digging up the past. It's about reshaping belief systems, rewiring, evolving in the way that we live. And of course, that involves healing certain areas of our past for long term benefit and gain. But there's also the stuff that we can do in the right now to complement that. And almost for me, that's like the embodied and integrated tools that actually help you to feel different in the now. I honestly, genuinely believe that the healing world has become, I want to use the word masochistic's the first word that came into my head there. We're going to use it here. I don't know if it's 100% accurate, but we're going to go with that. It's got to the point where trudging ourselves over hot coals continually. It's what I look when I see out the way all the time. Continually, okay? When we're healing, we've got to replace that healing with, what we're releasing and what we're letting go of with personal energy, with vital personal power, life force energy. And we do that by making like changes in the now as we go as well, okay? the embodied and the integrated tools. So we're starting to feel on an everyday basis a bit more alive and vibrant and zesty and passionate, whilst at the same time, there's duality in everything, whilst at the same time, experiencing what comes with being on a healing path, the grief or the loss. You get where I'm coming from there? So our body is constantly giving us information, and most of us have learned to ignore it because we were taught that our mind is the authority, that logic is the authority, that plans are the authority, but your body is connected to your inner compass. Your body is connected to what is actually true for you. And I'm going to have to pause for a second and plug my computer into charge before it runs out. I thought I'd already done that, but I haven't. So give me a second. Okay, wonderful. Back. So what was I saying? I was saying that your body is constantly giving you information. That's what I was saying, wasn't it? And that most of us have learned to ignore it because we were taught that the mind is the authority, the logic and the plans. But our body's actually connected to our inner compass. Our body's connected to what's actually true for you and can be supported by spiritual wisdom. And for practitioners, this is literally your practice. You're trained in energy, right? Or you are potentially thinking about becoming trained in energy. You already know that feeling things in your body is either happening or is possible, and it does hold information. Some of you will have the gift of being able to sense and feel information for yourself, then for your client. It comes from being an empowered empath and not trapped within that beautiful gift, but it's hidden and clouded by a whole multitude of varying different issues. So the practice here is extending that out and into your whole life. What does your body tell you about your boundaries, your pricing, your visibility, your community, the way that you're called to practice uniquely, and what exclusive offering are you here to do in the world? You know, it's one of the things that I love most about my spirit-led Reiki pathway. And students that I work on there, and new and qualified pre-existing practitioners, they leave knowing, having a not just a cognitive knowing, but a deep soul knowing, because they're working with their spiritual team, directed and integrating that spiritual wisdom, what it is that they are here to do. I love that. For everybody on a general level, this is the practice of coming home, if you want, without sounding cliche, of noticing and trusting what your body's telling you, even when your mind is trying to override it. The body reset is foundational, because everything else does get easier when you're actually in your body. And I've found, for me personally, this is a conscious practice, and one that I still choose day after day. It's not something that comes naturally, nor comfortably, nor easily for me personally. Foundation 4 is to create aligned rhythms, not rigid rules. Now, this is where, in my experience, people usually get stuck with the getting back to basics thing. They create these rigid rules. Morning routine's got to be perfect. Meditation practice has to happen at 5 a.m. Boundaries that are so strict they become another form of control. That's how I used to take to a boundary back years ago, and it was a definite learning for me. Yeah, I was thinking the other day, as we we're coming into 2026, the amount of people that I culled at one point from my Facebook page, and I literally couldn't even go back and give you any logical reason to that now. But on a path of healing, I have found that I've made many movements, choices, and decisions that I felt were aligned and right for me at that time. Even if now I look back on it, certainly ones that I've made out with the past 2 to 3 years, and I think, oh, June, was that right? Did you do that right? And you think, no, do you know what? I was living, even at that time, aligned with my values, making choices that felt right for me, and I was finding my way. So if you're sitting there thinking it and being harsh on yourself because of decisions or past bits of you that have made choices and whatever on a path of healing, when you are actively trying to help yourself. Now, I'm not saying that there is any one person better or worse than any other human in this life, but I do think that we, as a collective who are committed to owning ourselves, taking accountability, taking responsibility, should give ourselves grace when it comes to pouring ourselves into that work and releasing and letting go past and previous versions of ourselves. We know things now that we didn't know at that time. Please always bear that in mind. Anyway, went off again. Rigid rules, that's what I was talking about. Now, I was terrible for this personally. In fact, I've still got to watch myself with it because I know discipline and routine help my neurodiverse brain. But I'm also a recovered, so therefore always in recovery, of being a control freak, like super control freak. And that'll always be part of me. So I work really mindfully with that because when life happens, when your kid gets sick, when you've got an emergency appointment, when you need to take a day off, when you just can't today for whatever reason, the whole thing collapses when you work with the rigid rules and not the aligned rhythms. And then you might feel like a failure. But that's not how alignment works. Alignment isn't rigidity, alignment is responsiveness. So the fourth foundation is build rhythms that can flex, not rules that break. A rhythm is something to return to. It's something that has give in it, something that bends with your actual life. And instead of breaking when life isn't cooperating, in my experience, life's not always going to cooperate, right? Challenge and change, part of human experience. Think about how your body works. Your heartbeat's a rhythm, your breath's got a rhythm. These are not rigid. They speed up, they slow down, they respond to what's happening, but they're still rhythms. They're still consistent patterns that keep you alive. That's what we need in our lives, I believe. Not I meditate for 20 minutes every single morning and I'm a failure if I don't do that at 5 a.m. no matter what. But I've got a meditation practice. It's part of my morning. Some days it's 20 minutes. Some days it's 2 minutes. Some days it's just 3 conscious breaths. But then I return to it. Meditation is a common go-to for the majority of people. It's not for everybody, and that's absolutely fine. If it's not for you, you find what works for you. Just because everybody else is meditating doesn't mean that you got to meditate too. It's not, I never work past 6 o'clock. It's my rhythm is that I'm mostly offline after 6 o'clock, but on the rare days when I'm not, I'm intentional about it and I return to my rhythm the next day. It's not, I see clients Monday to Friday, 9 till 5, but my rhythm is that I see clients in blocks that feel sustainable. I build in buffer time. I'm responsive to what my body needs and I'm consistent about it. One of the things that I make clear of really upfront on the spirit-led Reiki pathway is that I am proud to be able to model a way of life that I feel is sustainable when it comes to being a mentor. That means probably about 2.5 weeks out of a month, I'm on top of my game. One whole week in particular, I can get done in 1 week what I can get done in, what I could get done in 4 when I'm feeling differently. But there is a portion of the month where I'm not firing on all cylinders. My body, my makeup, my physiology, it doesn't allow for it. I therefore will forget things. I'm not always going to be as instantly responsive as I am the other 2.5 weeks out of a month. And I'm all right with that. I'm really proud of it, actually. I'm proud that I can model what I believe to be a sustainable way of being as a mentor. So do we feel the difference there? One's brittle, one's alive, one breaks under pressure, one flexes and it holds for practitioners. This is huge because you've probably been taught that there's a right way to run your practice or a right schedule, right pricing structures, the right number of clients, the right way to show up, the right way to do Reiki. But the rhythm is yours. What's sustainable for you might not be sustainable for somebody else. What energizes you might drain somebody else. What your clients need from you, I'm going to say might be completely different from what another practitioner's clients' needs are. They will be completely different because if you are authentic and showing up as who you truly are, in whatever respect in your daily life, online, wherever you show up, yeah? Now, it's not always about, this is where business and life interlink. You will be attracting people into your world, into your personal life, your clients that are absolutely aligned for you, that will pay you to support them in the way that they need to be supported, because you are absolutely right for them. I'm not for everybody. I spoke about this over the holidays. My whole life, people have had an instantaneous reaction to me, and I am grand with it. In fact, actually, it's one of my, I'm going to say strongest points now in the work that I do. There's one or two reactions. Jane, brilliant, love her, or Jane, absolutely not, absolutely not, cannot stand her, cannot hear her voice, cannot. There typically tends to not be an in between, right? And for a short period of time, as my later teenage years, I tried to be that in between. I tried to look that in between. I tried to sound like that in between, buying in between. And you might find, given that I am talking about attracting the type of clients that are aligned for you, you might find the same. Now, it's not about whether you're extroverted or introverted. And I mean, I could, again, go off down a tangent on what I actually think of those boxing and labels. But it's not about whether you're introverted or extroverted, whether you're outgoing or whether you're not outgoing, whether you're able to speak up on things that you believe in right now or not. What I'm actually saying here is, you might find that if you're really true about the type of person that you are, you ain't middle ground, right? You've got quirks. I'm particularly goofy. Okay, I tend to attract a significant amount of neurodiverse people, whether that be ADHD, autism, various ways, neurodiversities. And I attract more and more of that the more and more I show up as myself. I encourage you to do the same thing. So the practice here is, what's the rhythms that let you stay connected to yourself whilst serving others? Not the rigid rule, the actual rhythm. For everybody, it's just about building a life that you can actually live. Not a life that looks good on Instagram, not a life that impresses people, but a life that you can actually sustain while staying connected to what matters to you, to yourself, those that you love, to what matters to you in your life, as opposed to trying to escape life. And what I'm really meaning here is, it's not always life itself you're trying to escape, in my experience. It's more life with yourself, you. I tried to outrun myself for a long time. If you are on a path of self-exploration, healing, growth, energy worker, Reiki practitioner, please believe me when I say you will not ever outrun yourself. The rhythm is what brings you back. The rhythm is what keeps you alive, really. Foundation 5, the last one. Make space for the guides, not just the goals. Okay, this is the one that really ties it all together. We're taught to set goals, clear, specific, measurable goals. And then we're taught to achieve them, to stay focused, to not get distracted, to push through. Goals can be important if you're a goal-orientated person. I am. I find it helpful. I'm not saying that they're not, but here's what I am saying. If you're only listening to your intellectualized, logical goals, like I very much used to, you're missing the guidance. Your goals come from your mind. Your goals come from what you think you should do, what intellectually speaking, logically, rationally, how you might get there. What potentially, how you can execute things, where you want to be, where you want to get to. Spiritual guidance comes from somewhere, I was going to say deeper, that doesn't even cut it. Somewhere of the type of expansiveness that I just have never experienced anywhere else. Perhaps from the synchronicities and opportunities that show up from the people who cross your path, or the gentle like redirects that are trying to move you. And most of the time we ignore the guidance because it doesn't match the goal, or we don't actually know how to obtain, like unearth, interpret and integrate the guidance. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But actually the guidance can open up better outcomes to goals that we might not have even thought about, because it doesn't come from Somewhere logical, somewhere intellectual. The most accurate spiritual guidance, of course, right? Coming from inside a spirit led Reiki journey for insight, guidance, or healing, where you can bridge the spiritual and physical realms to connect safely and effectively with this guidance. Then you can interpret it and apply it, like take action in your life that aligns with it. Shift in perspective, unearthing something you likely would never have thought about with your mind intellectually. But here's what happens when you ignore the guidance. You might achieve the goal. That was very much me. But you are on some level empty, unfulfilled, partially unfulfilled, completely just unfulfilled. You get what you thought you wanted, but you realise it's not actually what you wanted. You reach the finish line and you're like, tap, tap, tap. What's going on in here? All right, okay, cool. Not a lot. Wonderful. So the fifth foundation, set your goals if you want to. Stay committed to your direction, but make space for the guides to direct you in a way that actually leads to not only external but internal fulfillment. Okay? So I'm going to say that again because this is the real revolution in how we approach this year. Commit to your direction, hold your goals lightly, and stay radically open to being guided. For practitioners, this means you can build a thriving business and stay connected to why you started practicing in the first place. You can have income goals and listen with all of your being to what your client actually needs, directed by your spiritual team. You can have a business plan and let your practice evolve based on what you're learning. You can be ambitious and be guided. Like, we're not linear human beings. I could speak a bit here to how, what spirituality looks like, or what a Reiki practitioner looks like, or how people think. I met Nicola Sturgeon recently, and I'm reading Nicola Sturgeon is Scotland's ex-First Minister, she's a politician. And in her book recently, she spoke about how she thought she had to dress for literally the first chunk of her career, of which she's achieved, irrespective of your political persuasions. As a female, she's achieved some tremendous things. And she was speaking about how for the first portion of her career, she dressed, she spoke, because she thought she had to, particularly in at that time, even more predominantly so, a male prevalent industry, and I think a good bit of that can be applied here. The goal isn't like the destination; the goal's like direction, and the guides can be what keep you moving in a way that actually feels like you and aligned for you. Now, generally, this means you can have ambitions and be open to something better showing up, not miss the opportunity in the journey, not be so blinkered that you're closing out everything else that might be a beautiful possibility for you. You can work towards something and be willing to pivot if the universe is redirecting you. Your guides are supporting you to get there with that. You can be intentional and be responsive. This, my experience, is the sweet spot. It's not where you're just achieving, you're living. So let me bring this back down to where we started. I want to get back to basics so that I can start living, is where we started, right? That's what you're actually saying when you say you want to get back to basics. And the five foundations, the energy audit, the deviation, wisdom, the body reconnection, the aligned rhythms, the guided goals, these aren't about like doing less. They're just about doing what's yours. Because here's the thing, you don't need to blow your life up necessarily. You don't need to start over on Monday. You don't need to quit everything and to move the mountains and abandon responsibilities. In my experience, what we need to just start doing is to start pruning back what's actually alive in you. And that's different for everybody. For some of you, it means staying in your job, but setting boundaries that actually protect your energy. For some of you, it means leaving your job because you finally admit that it's not yours. For some of you, it means evolving your Reiki practice while building a business around it. For some of you, it might mean finally claiming that you want to be a Reiki practitioner and energy worker, even if nobody else in your family understands it. But it's all kind of the same thing underneath, isn't it? It's about reclaiming your life from the systems that have been running it. The systems that tell you you need to be productive all the time, that you need to optimize everything, you need to follow protocol even when it doesn't fit. You need to isolate your spiritual practice from your real life or your business. You need to choose between ambition and authenticity. Those systems have been running your life and they are exhausting. They exhaust me. So the practice for this year, I feel, isn't about adding more, it's about subtracting what's not yours so that what is yours can finally breathe. And when that happens, when you actually start living again, that's when everything's changing, isn't it? That's when your Reiki practice becomes medicine instead of obligation. It's when your business becomes an expression of who you are instead of the grind. It's when your relationships become real again instead of something you've been pouring into, or you're too depleted to show up for, or you're too in one way and it used to being one way, to be able to really cultivate that connection that feels brilliant for you. That's when you start living. Now, if you're nodding along with me here and feel that I could support you in any way deeper than what we're exploring in this podcast today, because this, of course, is my free musings, with any of the blocks that might be coming up for you right now, I've linked my energy clinic, which is always open and available in the podcast notes for you, along with some other free bits and pieces that you might find of interest. I really look forward to chatting to you again next episode. The mainstream Reiki narrative is incomplete. You already know this intuitively. The power's always been within your spiritual connection, not in symbols, attunements, or lineages that ask you to surrender your sovereignty. When you step away from prescribed methods and into connecting in alignment with spiritual wisdom, the gaps in your training find true completion. Your intuitive trust is strong and it's clear. Spiritual insights are unearthed, interpreted, and integrated. And your unique soul-led energy work becomes the channel for impact that only you are here to deliver. This isn't about replacing one dogma with another. It's about returning to the source of power. If you feel called to ditch the script and trust your direct line to spiritual wisdom, then I invite you to take my free 30-minute workshop. The link's in the podcast notes for you.